Well, good evening. Our mission is to provide direct funding for pediatric cancer research. We formed in 2001, at first as a way to remember Jeff Pride, Ann and Jim's youngest child, who at just 5 years old was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Tragically, Jeff lost that battle and passed away 3 days after his 7th birthday.
Well, our son was diagnosed with acute leukemia when he was 5 years old, and he went through a year of intensive chemotherapy, and then while he was doing the maintenance phase, after about 2 months he relapsed, which is unusual, and so we had him undergo a bone marrow transplant. And about 2 months after the bone marrow transplant, he relapsed again.
Jeff is my little brother. When I found out that I was Jeff's perfect match for his bone marrow transplant, I was so convinced that I was going to save his life. When that didn't turn out to be true, it was heartbreaking. And
his doctors at that time said they really didn't have anything to offer at that point, since he obviously had a real aggressive type of leukemia, and they recommended that we just take him home and enjoy him for whatever time he had left.
We tried, to do some family things, and one of the things that he always had enjoyed was going to Great America. So we gave him a lot of pain medication, and then we went off to Great America with him. So we, said, Jeff, what would you like to do? You can do anything. And he didn't want to go to the front of the line because he didn't want attention drawn to himself. And in fact, he said, a lot of things were a little bit hard for him. And so he said, I just don't think I'll do that. Don't worry. Dad, Mom, I'll do that next year. And we knew there was no next year. It really hit us that all he really needed was a future. All he wanted was a future. And we realized, too, that the thing that we need to be putting money toward is research.
1 in 300 kids will get cancer by the age of 20. Cancer is still the #1 disease killer of children. Leukemia is still the #1 childhood cancer, making up for about 1/3 of those new cases every year. Right now, there's more than 14,000 new cases of pediatric cancer diagnosed every year, and over 40,000 kids going through cancer treatment at any one given time.
Childhood cancer is a relatively rare condition. It's a real important condition. It's rare. But the only way we can make progress is if many hospitals work together and share our experiences.
We've now been able to identify some new targets for therapy, and we've been able to develop targeted rational therapy that has really, I think, going to dramatically improve not only survival, but we're also hoping that it'll improve the outcome of these kids, because we're hoping that this treatment will be less toxic.
It's important to understand where research funding comes from in this country. About 60% of funds come from industry. About 25% of funds comes from the National Institutes of Health, and the remainder comes from philanthropic foundations like the Jeffrey Pride Foundation. For childhood cancer, however, industry doesn't really invest money. There's not a good economic model, so we are entirely dependent on funds from the National Cancer Institute and funds from foundations like the Jeffrey Pride Foundation. We couldn't deliver the research we need to do without the support of JPF.
Government NIH funding has continued to decrease over the last several decades. So having a foundation like the Jeffrey Pride Foundation or other philanthropic organizations that have donated to the Children's Oncology Group has really allowed us to continue to do the kind of research that we need to do. We never otherwise would be able to do the research without additional funds, because the NIH funding is just not adequate.
We are short on funds that are available to us through granting agencies and through the National Cancer Institute. We need money, and the only way we can do it is to have foundations such as the Jeffrey Pride Foundation.
This foundation has had an impact more than you can imagine. They've been one of the greatest supporters of the Children's Oncology Group for years. And when you leave here tonight, you will leave feeling better because you will have made a difference in a child's life this year, next year, and the years to come. And there's going to be no greater feeling that you have.
So many wonderful people came into our lives, and there were so many great groups that helped us throughout the time when Jeff was sick. But our wish would be to cure the diseases.
As much as I wanted to be the cure for my brother, I see that it's so much bigger than that, and that all these people that are involved are a part of the cure. And I just feel so blessed to be part of it, and I feel so grateful for everyone that's involved.
One other story that really stuck out in my mind was when we were meeting with the first COG chair that we had met. His name was Dr. Riemann, and it was in 2003, and he said to us, and at that time the human genome had just been completely mapped, and he said, with this new finding, with the mapping of the human genome, there is no limit to what we can do, and the ability to find cures is really only going to be held up if we don't have the funding to do the research. So that made our commitment 100% to research.